Think the Egyptians were all pyramids and pharaohs? Think again. Their army was a battlefield laboratory of wild inventions, surprise tactics, and brutal precision. The Egyptian military didn't just rely on numbers or brute force. They turned creativity into a weapon. And some of their battle tactics? Absolutely insane. Let's start with something unexpected: river warfare. Egypt was the gift of the Nile, and the Egyptians knew how to weaponize that gift. Their armies often used the Nile not just as a highway for transport, but as a front line of attack. During campaigns in Nubia and against Libyan tribes, Egyptian soldiers would load entire regiments onto papyrus boats, sneak down the river under cover of night, and strike isolated enemy camps before anyone even realized an army had arrived. The surprise wasn't just in the timing, it was in the place. Who expects an army to come by canoe? But this wasn't just improvisation, it was strategy. The Egyptians used the river as an extension of their battlefield intelligence. Scouts were sent ahead disguised as fishermen, quietly observing enemy movements from the water. Small, fast boats operated as mobile archery platforms, launching volleys before vanishing into side channels. In some campaigns, they even coordinated attacks from both land and river simultaneously, trapping enemies between rising waters and relentless infantry. The use of the Nile gave Egyptian forces the power to appear where no army should logically be, and vanish before a counterattack could even begin. For Egypt, the river wasn't a barrier, it was a battlefield. And the Nile wasn't the only natural force they learned to control. During certain campaigns, they took advantage of the flooding season, luring enemies onto terrain that, weeks later, would turn into a muddy trap. Chariots bogged down, infantry lost footing. The Egyptians had already withdrawn to higher ground, watching as the terrain turned their homeland into a liquid prison for any invader foolish enough to pursue them. But ground warfare was no less refined. Now picture this: a line of Egyptian chariots, wheels spinning across the sand, but instead of charging in wild chaos, they're operating like clockwork. Egyptian chariots were light, fast, and devastatingly effective. Pulled by 2 horses and manned by a driver and an archer, these mobile units could unleash volleys of arrows while weaving in and out of enemy formations. What made them especially deadly wasn't just speed, it was coordination. Pharaohs like Thutmose III and Ramesses II trained their chariot corps like elite squads. In the Battle of Kadesh, Ramesses' chariots didn't just break enemy lines, they danced through them, retreating and reforming like cavalry with built-in archery turrets. But their brilliance wasn't limited to the battlefield. Charioteers practiced relentlessly, learning to maneuver through narrow paths, around obstacles, even over uneven terrain, always with deadly precision. Communication between driver and archer was near telepathic, honed through drills and royal oversight. Some chariots even carried spare bows or lances, allowing archers to adapt mid-battle. In effect, these weren't just weapons. They were high-speed command units capable of punching holes through enemy ranks, then vanishing like smoke in the desert wind. Speaking of Ramesses II, he also mastered psychological warfare. Before some battles, he sent scouts ahead not just to spy, but to spread misinformation. In the lead-up to Kadesh, Hittite spies fed Ramesses false reports about enemy positions. But Ramesses turned the game on them. When he realized the truth, he staged an audacious solo counterattack with a small guard force, crashing into the enemy before they were ready. The result? His enemies panicked. It wasn't just strength that won the day, it was narrative. He had statues carved, poems written, and battle scenes engraved in temples celebrating his divine victory. Whether or not the battle was truly a win remains debated by historians, but the story Ramesses told ensured his legend endured. His image as a fearless warrior king was cemented in stone and memory alike. For Ramesses, perception was power, and he wielded it as skillfully as his sword. But while mind games could break morale, the Egyptians never forgot the value of firepower. Then there were the composite bows, Egypt's sniper rifles of the ancient world. These weren't simple wooden arcs. They were crafted from layers of wood, horn, and sinew, giving them massive power and range. Egyptian archers trained for years to handle these weapons. In battle, a single wave of archers could turn the tide. During sieges, they'd rain arrows from fortified positions. During chariot attacks, they fired from full gallop. And in close combat, they reversed grip and used the bows as bludgeons. Precision, versatility, and brutality, all in one package. But there was more to these weapons than just firepower. Archers often worked in coordinated lines, rotating between volleys so that a steady stream of arrows darkened the sky. Some units used flaming tips to ignite siege engines or enemy camps. Others dipped their arrows in poison for psychological terror. Enemies often broke ranks before contact even began, panicked by the relentless assault. The composite bow wasn't just a tool, it was a message. You won't even see us before you fall. And when precision wasn't enough, the Egyptians embraced misdirection. Let's not forget about battlefield deception. In one campaign against the Sea Peoples, the Egyptians faked a retreat along the coast, drawing the invaders into a narrow strip between the sea and the dunes. Hidden archers and infantry emerged from the sand like ghosts, encircling the enemy and cutting off escape. It wasn't just a fight, it was a trap. The Sea Peoples were fierce, but they weren't prepared for an army that could turn the landscape itself into a weapon. The Egyptians had studied the terrain, calculated the tides, and timed their movements perfectly. The result was total disarray. Panicked and hemmed in, the invaders couldn't maneuver, couldn't retreat, and couldn't regroup. Some drowned trying to flee through the surf. Others fell in close combat, trapped in a natural funnel of death. What looked like a desperate flight was actually a masterstroke of manipulation. And when stealth wasn't enough, the Egyptians weren't above using shock. Pure, unforgettable shock. One of the craziest Egyptian tactics? Flaming livestock. According to some accounts, during sieges or desperate defenses, Egyptians would douse animals, usually cattle or donkeys, in flammable resin, set them ablaze, and send them stampeding toward enemy lines. The result was chaos, terrified soldiers, ruptured formations, and the psychological horror of burning animals charging into camps. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. Fire wasn't just a tool, it was a message. It screamed unpredictability and desperation, and it forced enemies to react emotionally rather than strategically. Horses bolted, troops scattered, and discipline crumbled. In the smoke and confusion, Egyptian infantry would move in, precise, prepared, and merciless. Another bizarre yet brilliant tactic? Battlefield noise. The Egyptian army understood the power of sound. In some cases, they equipped troops with drums, horns, and even bronze rattles. Before combat began, they created an overwhelming wall of noise, designed to intimidate and confuse. Enemies unfamiliar with the clamor sometimes panicked before a single sword was drawn. The Egyptians had turned music into mayhem. And it wasn't random. These sound barrages were timed with movements on the battlefield, masking advances or signaling surprise attacks. In effect, noise became a weapon of rhythm, timing, and terror. But not all battlefield power came from chaos. Some of it came from belief. Then there's the tactic of divine presence. Before battle, pharaohs often paraded the image of a god, usually Amun or Ra, before the troops. These statues weren't just symbolic, they were said to guide the army. Belief became strategy. Troops fought harder believing the gods marched with them. Morale skyrocketed. Enemies, seeing the divine symbols carried into war, hesitated. Was this an army or a holy force? In Egypt, the line blurred. Some sources suggest these statues were even consulted before key maneuvers, their placement interpreted as omens. Strategy fused with ritual. Faith became part of the battle plan. And even victory itself became part of the arsenal. If all else failed, there was still one final tactic: monument warfare. When the Egyptians crushed a rebellion or won a major battle, they didn't just celebrate, they built obelisks, stelae, temple reliefs. They transformed victory into permanence. These monuments didn't just remember the dead, they warned the living. Every carved spear and impaled enemy sent a clear message: challenge Egypt, and your defeat will be etched in stone.